What an action-packed meeting. I tell you, they're getting better every time. Thanks to our host and our organizers here. I think it's really important information in all these areas. I just got through my drug disposal slides real quick because I didn't think we needed to worry about that. What you guys are saying. Real quick, though, we're going to get to that because we spent a lot of time. Brittany's with me, my administrative director, Linda, my pharmacist. I have Tim and Robert that are specializing in all types of drug disposal. But real quick, something came up recently we want to let you guys know about. An endoscopy center that I cover reviewed in aspiration cases in 2014. They were concerned. They had about 5 or 6. They came to me and they looked at anything that was common in those 5 aspiration cases, and each patient had been taking an antidepressant medication. So we are looking at this app. We looked through PubMed. We looked at the drug information, at the package inserts. We did not see anything referencing caution with antidepressants and endoscopy procedures, but she felt that was the only thing in common. So we're actually looking at possibly the prevalence of aspiration in endoscopy procedures. If you were to look at your aspirations, if you had any, and you determined that similar commonality with someone that was at home taking antidepressants, or you want help with understanding this research that we're doing, call Brittany, and I think it may lead us to nothing, but if this is a commonality, this is something that should be known by the FDA or the drug manufacturers, and it may end up being a commonality in these types of individuals and cautions. So please share that, give us a call. And I also wanted to touch on another area of concern that I've had over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Who has heard of the FDA initiative to remove unapproved drugs in this country? This is something, this has been frustrating me for about 3 weeks. I uncovered from a call from an anesthesiologist that they were having trouble getting neostigmine, which is used by anesthesia. So I figured maybe it's a shortage. I called a compounding pharmacy. They informed me that neostigmine was approved by the FDA prior to 1960. At that time, the FDA had no requirements for a manufacturer of a drug to prove efficacy or an indication for use. They just had to show to the FDA that the drug was safe in humans. So many drugs that we use today, and if you went onto the FDA website, you could research unapproved medications that we currently use today. Neostigmine is a very important drug that we use in the operating rooms. It reverses paralyzing agents. Well, I called the compounding pharmacy, and the FDA has given approval to a new drug. It's called BLOXIVERZ. You may have had to buy this recently at a very expensive price. Yep. This is the only neostigmine that's accepted to be made in this country by the FDA. They've told every generic company to cease and desist manufacturing. They've told every compounding pharmacy that it is illegal to make this medication. As you know, I spend a lot of time understanding why we have drug shortages, and I'm passionate about this because I think, I'm ready to go to Washington to discuss these requirements. Neostigmine was it was a relatively inexpensive medication that we had in every anesthesia cart. Well, this company has this approved drug at $87 a vial for a 10 ml vial. Now, mind you, it's a multi-dose vial. So now, FDA and CMS don't apparently speak to each other, because why would you have a multi-dose vial in your operating room where this drug is used? So you're throwing this vial out, and this change could cost this country millions of dollars in drug expenses because of this FDA initiative. So I want you to research this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it's getting me very frustrated because of what we see happening with medications. This is the initiative, and what happened in 2006 with marketed unapproved drugs. They call it marketed unapproved drugs. As I researched this, it's the FDA's way to reach out to the New England compounding deaths from drugs that they made and had been contaminated, but it really isn't even related to compounded drugs. It's manufactured drugs. Talks about the FDA started in 1906 with how drugs were approved. In 38, they required to be for safety, and then from 38 to 62, they only had to show safety, not efficacy. That drugs manufactured in those were approved by the FDA in that time frame are now looking to be eliminated from this country. A lot of it are cough medicines and over-the-counter things, but a lot of drugs that we use every day in the ASCs could be affected. So this is something that you can look at the Orange Book. It's something that the FDA has of every proprietary name drug, generic name drug, and you can determine if it has been approved. So if you look up glycopyrrolate in the Orange Book, which is on your website, glycopyrrolate is approved and is made by 3 generic companies. So you can look up any generic drug, any proprietary drug, and it will say approved or not approved. And if it doesn't show up, then that means that the FDA will be eliminating it or has already eliminated it. This is BLOXIVERZ. Very nice, colorful ad if you go to the company's marketing page. This company that got this made is from, I think, Georgia or Midwest state, I can't remember. It was recently purchased by a company from France. Okay? They got this patented, and get ready because we use a lot, phenylephrine. This is another drug that this company from France, this is the company that got it made, but some Frommel Technologies bought this company. They're from Dijon, France, and I believe that when I went on to like the stock market information, analysts are projecting that BLOXIVERZ will bring in $200,000 to $300,000 a year in revenue for this company. So it's all coming out of what we used to use neostigmine for at a few dollars a vial. So I'm very curious at this. Here is our Assistant Director of Guidance and Policy. Her name right here, her email and her phone number. Feel free to reach out. I will be calling. And I ran into a lobbyist for the AMA, and I'm going to be speaking to that group about my concerns. I'm not one to say that we need to look at maybe the unapproved drugs that were approved, but I'm also saying, why doesn't CMS and the FDA speak about eliminating multi-dose vials? I think the FDA should probably say no manufacturer can make multi-dose vials. So that's where it ended with me. And now let's talk about drug disposal. Brittany has been doing a lot of research. I've been doing a lot of research. There's been a lot of questions sent to us, mixed messages from different organizations. Tim is here from a company that does drug disposal, Daniels, and it's similar to a Stericycle. Some of my accounts in the Philadelphia area are getting really positive feelings from how Daniels provides this service. Robert is here from DEVINE'S Pharmacy, located in New Jersey, for owner of DEVINE'S Pharmacy for how many years now? 38. 38 years. And he is now recently, within the last couple of weeks, applied to be a take-back pharmacy center. And if anybody knows about the DEA regulations changes in September, I and Brittany watched the webinar. Did anybody see the ASCA webinar a few weeks ago by a pharmacist that works for a waste management company now? Really good information. We started to dissect that and want to talk a little bit about how to dispose of medications. We have a lot of different categories. When you have expired drugs, what do we do with them? When we have expired narcotics, what do we do with them? When we have medications partially used in an operating room, in a syringe, where do we dispose of that? A partial vial of medications after a procedure, where does that go? I hate waste, and that's what's happening today. We have so much waste, but we have to dispose of it now because, other regulations require us to do this in a certain manner. We have hazardous waste, we have non-hazardous waste. So we have a lot of things to think about. It can get very confusing. What we want to try to do, I'll be working with Tim and Robert, Brittany and I want to try to have a simplistic way for an ASC to allow their staff and their employees to properly dispose of medications. Not only to make sure that we meet the regulations, but also that we don't increase our costs. We try to watch our costs. Robert has some great ideas. Tim has some wonderful ideas on not to allow things thrown in the wrong bucket that cost more expensive to dispose of. So I think we will not have all your answers tonight. We are continuing to try to get a plan out to everybody, but we want to let you know where we're at. We do have hazardous drugs. In a surgery center, we're not talking about a lot of drugs that are hazardous. There are certain drugs that are on a T list, D list, U list. I think, Tim, you might want to touch on that a little bit. In a surgery center, there's not a lot. Used patches, transderm scope comes to mind in a center. That can be deemed hazardous. Warfarin tablets are not being used in surgery centers too often unless you're doing joint replacement. Inhalers, epinephrine containers. We're going to talk about epinephrine and how to designate whether it goes hazardous or non-hazardous. Chemotherapy, we'll talk about that. We also have non-hazardous, non-controlled. What do we do with the expired medications? Okay, what's the best, most economical way to remove them from your facility? Expired partial vials and partial wasted vials, wasted syringes. I got 2 emails today. One from a client in Maryland who was cited because anesthesia was shooting the balance of their syringes into red sharps, and that wasn't allowed. Another center got cited for throwing the partial syringes with medications in them already in the sharps. And Tim's going to talk a little bit about where those partial vials and partial syringes should be going so that we don't have regulation problems. To get back to controlled drugs because that's a little different chain of thought. So disposal, talk about different regulations, how to dispose, what form of destruction. Destruction, the big word in destroying controlled substances, they must be non-retrievable. We heard on that webinar, the only thing the DEA considers non-retrievable at this moment is Incineration. Forgot that word. No more coffee grounds, kitty litter. Incineration is the only way to destroy controlled substances that have expired. Now we're going to talk about something partial in the syringe. Okay, that after a procedure, there's a little fentanyl, 1 ml, or there's a little something left in a vial. That's already out of the hands of DEA because it's already been signed out to be administered to the patient. But full vials, incineration. Non-retrievable, again, the condition or state in which a controlled substance shall be rendered following process that permanently alters the controlled substance, and on and on and on. DEA loves these kinds of words. They had to send out a clarification letter just for their regulation in September because you didn't even understand their 50-page document. Then I didn't understand their 20-page clarification. Non-retrievable, again, do not shoot wasted controlled substance, residual strings containing into the sharps container. Okay, repeat after me. Do not shoot. Really, it can't go in we can't shoot into the sharps. We're going to talk about how to get rid of that. Kitty litter, no longer considered non-retrievable. Okay? Methods of destruction. Secured, make sure it's by your local agents. We can't send it down the drain. Waste is generated and destroyed in an institutional setting. Must follow, but not to be recorded DEA Form 41. We're going to talk a little bit about more of, narcotic destruction. There's a thing in New Jersey called the CDS department. They have a different form, and they allow destruction on site. We have put a call into the CDS office and are awaiting clarification because we don't know. The DEA webinar said the DEA says you must incinerate and you're not allowed to destroy on site. You have to use a reverse distributor or Robert's drug take-back program. We don't know if the CDS, why have a CDS if, we have to follow DEA. Here's the clarification letter that came out about controlled substances dispensed to a patient. That's when you sign it out of your main cabinet and it goes with the anesthesia to the room. That is not in the hands of the DEA anymore. So that we want to be able to record that as waste. We want to follow appropriate destruction methods, but the DEA doesn't really track that waste. So basically what they're saying is, if you have a partial syringe after a procedure, that doesn't have to go back like to your drug destruction program like your expired narcotics would. You perform the same wastage in the OR after you use that partial bottle with a witness signature, and we're going to tell you how to throw away those syringes pretty soon. Wastage in the OR. The DEA is still strongly encouraged to maintain double signatures. This is what they're telling us, to continue what we do with partial vials in the OR. So that is different than when we're throwing expired drugs that you have in your NARC box to go for destruction. What is our wastage options? Drain, dispose, permitted by your state or locally public owned treatment works. I don't think we're allowed to put it in the sewer in New Jersey. Our governor said that. There was a DEA site that gave drugs that can go down the sewer, but again, that's not going to happen here. You can, one of these canisters that makes it inactive, the Cactus Smart Stick, they're very, pretty costly. I don't know if we want to go that route. Did anybody start the Cactus Smart Stick? I think it's a little cost ineffective. And then how you get rid of that canister within that smart sink. So we have, here's our options for expired controlled substances. Reverse distributor. Who uses a reverse distributor? They're licensed by the DEA to remove your expired narcotics. They can also remove all of your expired drugs for a fee, and they try to get credit for you. That's an option. Take back, which is what Robert's going to present today in a more maybe cost economical way. And I don't know what the buyback is. I can't remember what buyback is.
It's only available through certain distributors or manufacturers, and it's very difficult to actually have medication bought back. There's a very short list and it has to be specific.
So I think we're really dealing with reverse distributors for your expired narcotics and your take-back program, which pharmacies can apply to become a take-back program. So again, we have expired drugs, expired narcotics, and we have drugs used, partially used in the center after procedures. Reverse distribute, okay? They're companies that we can call. They come and remove your, or you send your expired drugs back. If it's a narcotic, they will have to send you a 222 form, and they actually transfer that drug to their now license. So it's away from your DEA practitioner's license to their license, and then they properly destroy it by incineration. So they take that responsibility with an associated fee. And this is where we want to allow Robert to discuss his findings with his service and maybe help us move closer to a more economical way of removing these drugs from your center. Rob, you want to come up and
Briefly, I promise. We're almost done, everybody. I promise.
Question for you first.
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't talk about the syringes in the OR. It's a partial syringe out of...
I'll talk about it. Yeah, I'm going to cover that real quick.
Okay. Just before we get on to that, what about the unit of measure? Because that's what's really causing the problem with a lot of the expired meds, because we don't need as much product as we're getting. We have to order this amount of drugs, but we only use this amount in a year, and by the time so that's really what the problem is. A lot of the problem. The unit of measure and how it's packaged, a box of 25, a box of 50.
Yeah, you know, that is that's another subject. Brittany and I are looking at using our website to try to share things, and Robert also. So I know where you're coming from.
Okay.
There's a lot of waste because you have to buy a box of 25 and you only put 2 in your crash cart.
Right.
We like to be able to share things more effectively and more cost efficiently. But this is just a disposal of things that we hope will have less of it once we change those things.
Thank you. Working with John and Tim in regards to effectively destroying the medication, the wastage or expired medication, controlled, non-controlled, to incineration. currently working with the Edison Police Department, Middlesex County, as well as the state in order to have an on-site incineration policy so that you won't have to transport to Carteret or another facility, and therefore be more cost-effective for all the members of the group.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have your information on the website, so if anybody needs anything, please call Robert. And he gave us a really nice bag with his information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Any
you.
questions at any time, please feel free to call.
I can fill these bags up with my expired.
And that's
I can call you tomorrow.
Our beach town.
that was Robert's first free drop-off. Fill that right up, use that for your expired drugs. Now you'll fill that up in 1 week, but eventually it'll take a year to fill that up with expired drugs. Tim is from Daniels. As I said, I've been using him at a few facilities, and he really does a nice job with customer service. And it's an option for you guys to consider when you're looking at someone to remove the expired drugs and non-hazardous drugs, hazardous drugs from your facilities. Thank you, John.
And we're sorry you're last.
Yeah, no worries. I'll be short and sweet. I've been waiting for this opportunity. I appreciate everybody's time. Everybody's ready to get out of here. I just want to tell you who I am, how I can help, and a little bit about the pharmacy waste program so you have a little bit better information to reach back out to us to kind of fine-tune. As it was mentioned plenty of times today, every facility is a little bit different. Not everybody's going to have the same drugs, the same needs, the same size. Somebody has 6 ORs, others have 1. So it is unique per the facility. So just keep that in mind. But a lot of this hazardous waste is very similar across the board. So Daniels has been around for 20 years, as John mentioned. Stericycle is one of our competitors. They do a great job in their pharmacy program as well. We try to pride ourselves on waste minimization. It's very easy with pharmaceutical waste to over-segregate. You can get fines of $30,000 per day. That scares a lot of people. Hey, I'll give it to you. You tell me what to do. I'll put it in the black box or the purple box or wherever. Well, the black hazardous piece of your pharmaceutical waste only represents about 10% of your waste. The non-hazard pharmaceuticals, which is the top portion here that I'll just briefly summarize, the biggest government entity here is the EPA. So, like John said, they don't want you to throw it down the drain. There's been studies on the Susquehanna River. I'm a huge fisherman. There's a lot of fish that are in that river that will never reproduce ever again, and it's pretty much because of the pharmaceutical waste that's been dumped in there over years and years and years. That was one study. I'm sure there's plenty of other studies that could support that. So the EPA doesn't want you to do that. There's governing law that prevents you from doing that. So again, the non-hazardous portion of your pharmaceutical program is probably going to represent 90% of those drugs. So, your warfarins, your arsenic trioxide, your nicotine patches, different things like that, you're going to use them, but they're going to be far and few between when you compare that to the non-hazardous drugs that you have. What makes it hazardous? There are certain characteristics, like John said, there's P and there's U listed. That really has to do with the active ingredients and the unused portion of those drugs and how they're going to be disposed of. But the last 4, it's either ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic. That's really what's making a hazardous drug. You don't want to put that specific drug in the same container with something else that's going to react to it. You're going to have a big issue with that. Next slide. So here are the couple of steps. So how do I get started? Okay, we know we have a problem. We got fined. What do we do? So the first thing I would do, and I recommend this a lot, reverse distribution programs are great. Talk to the people who you're getting your drugs through now. Typically they're already working with somebody. I can recommend some. I'm sure John and I, part of our program as this develops, we will also recommend. But this is where you can get credit back for the unused portions that you're using. It's unopened and expired. You can send it back. It's a sure way to track it. It's the least expensive cost to you. And that's all part of the whole scheme, is that you want to minimize your waste. So the things that can go back, they should go back. You shouldn't have to throw those in a black container. That's literally going to cost you hundreds of dollars to get picked up per container. So it's very, very expensive. Just keep that in mind. So one of the first things you do is look into your reverse distribution programs. What's available to you? How much drugs can they take away? After that, what you want to do is contact John. We can conduct a pharmaceutical of, hey, how many you have, how many are sitting on the shelves and unused that you had mentioned. After that, you can do, best practices for purchasing. Then we started getting into formulary analysis and different things like that, where we look at all your drugs. We say, here's your P list of drugs, here's your U list of drugs, here's your aerosols, and they have to be put in these types of containers. We do a walkthrough, we figure out the areas of the containers are going to make most sense. And the best practice that I recommend is you really want to have the pharmacy drive this program. I work with EVS managers, infection control, and it gets very complicated, and the more containers, it's like trash cans. If you had a high school and you put 100 trash cans out there, they're all going to get filled up. I just implemented a program 2 weeks ago, and I already got another in-service, and I found, hey, there was, PDF paper, someone printed out a report, and I guess they thought maybe the container was a shredder, and it ended up in the container. You pay for that to go in there. So it's not only what drugs go in the right places, but it's also, do we have an efficient way to dispose of these? Or are they placed in an area that anesthesia is cool with, the OR director is okay with? So there's a lot of different things that need to be considered. And so we manufacture non-hazardous containers. We have the black containers as well, but this is our fancy schmancy container. This is actually to put controlled substances. All the contents of this container gets incinerated. Okay, these are the most containers that you will have. You shouldn't have more black than purple containers. If you get into a hospital or acute scenario, it's a little bit different. For surgery centers, you're going to have more non-haz than you're going to have black. And if you have it the other way around, you should really relook at that program.
So here's the takeaway right now. Red Sharps used to have syringes with partial drug. We didn't know whether to shoot them in there into the chucks. This is where that syringe with about 1 ml left after a surgery goes into. This is where that partial vial that we're done with goes into, okay? If the syringe is completely empty, that goes in your Red Sharps, because the Red Sharps take sharps.
Right.
If the vial is nothing left in it or residual, where's that go?
So I hope everybody can see this. I only have one, so I apologize. So we manufacture these pens that look like syringes, which doesn't go over too well, but they help me with my example here. If you have this left over, this is residual medications. This goes into two places. Purple top or blue.
Non-hazardous.
Or it's hazardous and it goes into the hazardous.
Black.
Which most likely it's, depending on the form of it.
We're not going to have a lot of those drugs.
Correct. It's going to be far and few between.
Yeah.
However, if this is complete, and this is the big kicker, if this is completely empty by normal means, meaning there might be a drop in there, but there's not sufficient liquid that you can see in there, that can go, as long as it's non-hazardous, into a regular sharp spreadsheet. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because
that takes
when we did the OSHA training, it was like it all has to go in the sharps container, and glass has to go in the sharp container, and everything ended up having to go in the sharps container.
Well, this is a sharps container.
So when I tried to do this with your competitor, it became so complicated that everything seemed to be going in the sharps container. I didn't see your use for all these because, and then the other part is anesthesia. They work in so many places. It's getting them to change their culture.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, and then I have it where I'm not walking that far. I had a couple doctors, I'm not going over there.
We have the hard-sided blue containers and we put the partially empty vials in there.
Right, which is a non-hazardous container.
Okay,
Yep.
so if I had a syringe
And it was, go
and
ahead.
it had 1 ml of fentanyl in it, I take the needle off, put that in the sharps container, and put the syringe without the sharps.
They don't want you to do it.
They do not want you to touch that.
Alright, so now I have to have another.
That's a major needle stick injury opportunity.
Okay, so, well, it's a blunt needle, whatever.
That's depending on the partial drug goes into non-hazardous.
So there's a little bit less fentanyl, what have you.
Yes.
in
Blue, purple, whatever color it is, it could go in there. It's going to get destroyed via incineration. That container, at least our container, I could throw that off the roof of this building and it will not break.
Okay.
It's ABS plastics, made out of the same plastic NFL helmets made out.
Alright, so the blue containers I have, as long as it doesn't have a needle on it, it can be a syringe as long as it's not a sharp.
You can put a syringe in the blue container.
Yeah.
That blue container is for sharps, potential sharps. A glass vial is a potential sharp because you can break it and then it can become a sharp. So vials and needles, unless it's specific to that company's policy on how they want to ship it, that's not the way that we do it. So if you had a syringe with a needle on the end, in the container.
So listen, we want to get a chart with drugs that surgery centers use. Pictures that says, throw that partial syringe in that already has a needle into this container that's non-hazardous, that's considered a sharps. The red sharps is for empty syringes that have the needle on it.
Right.
So probably being the only anesthesiologist here to defend my profession. Our most typical drug is we have residual propofol.
Yeah, yeah.
And most of my guys dip it in a red. You're not to do that anymore.
Not anymore. Non-hazardous.
Or they squirt it into the garbage can and then
Yeah,
throw it in.
you don't want to.
So what you have to do is you
Stay in
have
the
to throw
syringe.
it into the purple.
Stay in the syringe,
Right.
into the purple. Partial vial, into the purple.
So really
Empty
every
vial,
room needs
empty
a purple.
syringe.
Every room needs a red.
Yeah.
Now needs a red and a
And a
purple.
purple. Or this, what is that, white
And the
one?
reason for that, it's not because I want to confuse you guys and add more containers, is that the cost of the red sharps container versus the cost of the purple top non-hazardous container is drastically different.
So you're saying it could go in the red, it's just more expensive in the
If
red?
it's completely empty,
No, I'm saying if you have a partially filled
if it's partially
syringe,
full,
it must
in
go
there.
in the purple. 'cause
Must go in
residual
purple.
drug.
if it's been empty by normal means, it can go in the red.
So where the anesthesiologists are squirting a little bit on a piece of gauze in front of the garbage, I gotta tell them to stop that.
It's not best practices.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
And the DEA wants us to try to do best practice, and that means take that syringe with whatever's left in it, take that vial with whatever left in it, non-hazardous container for incineration.
This container has been proved to be leak-proof in all orientations. There's a neoprene seal around it, so once it's locked, it's not going to leak.
Linda's going to challenge me.
Tomorrow,
Yes.
they don't have a purple container yet, they just learned about it today. What it needs to.
I can't hear what she said.
Tomorrow,
They don't have a non-hazardous program in effect right now. Which a lot of. Don't worry, you're not the only ones. This is very common.
is there any deadlines that you know about for our state that are mandated to have something in place?
For New Jersey, for non-hazardous, no.
Okay.
And I'll be totally honest with everybody. It's definitely highly urged by the EPA. I mean, you have the DEA telling you, I want you to handle controlled substance this way. I mean, they'll tell you to put it down the drain because they don't want anybody else to get it. The EPA says, no, don't do that. If it's me, I'm probably going to follow what the DEA says because they could put me in jail versus get fined by the EPA. And I'm just kind of speaking on my own mind, but it's not mandated. I cover New Jersey, PA, and Delaware, and the rules for every state are a little bit different.
Hospitals, when they get accredited by Joint Commission, are getting cited for not having this in place.
Correct.
Surgery centers, to the best of my knowledge, from AAA and whatever agency, have not mandated this improvement yet.
Yep.
But I'm sure it's coming, and then followed
Exactly.
by the Department of Health's citations of this. So I think it's best for us to all think about a plan at your facility to moving into the distribution system here.
And the other thing is that the cost of one of these versus the cost of one black container, you're talking $40 maybe per turn every time this is exchanged. And this particular container is a 4-gallon versus an 8-gallon black container that costs $300+ every time it turns. So again, 90% of your waste is non-hazardous.
How much is the red fund?
Well, the red's going to be your sharps program. So your sharps program typically there's going to be 2 ways sharps are billed per turn. So every time the container rolls over, or you're going to have an agreement based on locations, meaning you have 10 sharps containers, which are 10 red containers, and you pay per location per month. So
We pay by weight.
you can pay by weight too. Paying by weight is because you're using a disposable program, meaning you fill up the red container, the red can gets repackaged in the cardboard box, they weigh the cardboard box. That's, definitely a way to manage waste. My company is solely, we do help some customers out with disposables, but we're solely reusable. If you think about the disposable, you pay for that plastic container when you purchase it, you pay to fill it up, and you pay when you get disposed of it, and every other, the red liner that's in there and everything else you pay for.
Tim, are red sharps incinerated or are they
Autoclaved.
autoclaved? So narcotics have to be incinerated. So really that partial syringe can't go in that red sharps because it's not being incinerated.
Unless it's
Go ahead, sorry.
I have 2 questions. Number 1, what's the difference between the red container and the purple container or blue?
Yeah.
What's the difference in cost of those 2? My second question is Daniels now have hazardous waste disposal? Because when I called you a year ago.
Good question. Sharp one. So Daniels is not licensed to come and send a truck to your facility and pick it up. But I will tell you that we work with a lot of different, depending on your geographic area, Daniels covers the entire U.S. We have agreements in place with a large disposal transport services, because that's really what it is. That will come on site. They will sort through your stuff to make sure it's DOT compliant to ship. Go
I
ahead.
did that with them, when I called the gentleman, he never sent me any of his credentials. That's why the guy with the hazardous waste never came through, so I couldn't go with your company because I don't have the hazardous waste part.
Depending on who it was, and I can't speak for everybody that I work with, but there's two ways we could do it. I can either say, hey, this is who we use. They can bill you directly if you want to do that, or we can make it seamless. And the only difference that you know about our program is that when the truck shows up, it says Veolia or Triumvirate on it, or somebody else that does it.
What's the difference in price, the red and blue?
So the blue is for pharmaceuticals, okay? You're in the range of 20 to 40 bucks, depending on the size, and we have 4 different
Per
sizes.
container.
Yeah, per exchange. The red, it depends on your program. So you're talking about, is the red a disposable container? Because then you're buying a $6
I'm talking about
container.
your containers difference in price.
Okay, our containers are reusable.
Okay.
You could be at $15 per turn, or you could have 10 locations that'd be $10 per location, so it'd be $100 a month and would never change no matter how many times it turns over. I can't tell you that until I come on site and say, hey, you're going through this many shards.
So it wouldn't prohibit me from putting everything into the blue container, except the cost. Everything would go in the blue container, even though it's syringe.
Yeah, except
So
that
I can get
Yeah.
everything to have a blue container and pay the extra cost.
except that it's hazardous.
Yeah.
And you don't, unless it's hazardous, then it's gotta go in the
Right,
truck.
right.
And I have some surgery centers that most of their hazardous waste is returned through, either what Robert offered, right, or reverse distribution programs, where there's maybe one black container and it might change over once per year.
Listen, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank all of you for staying. Just for the newbies, we don't usually have a run past 7, so we apologize. Next meeting is June. We're trying to do